Russia holds hybrid war not only through propaganda and cyber attacks, but also through their religion. Investigators uncovered the fact that Kremlin has been building Russian Orthodox churches in Europe near sensitive areas and military infrastructure for spy purposes. How it works? Today we are going to hear all details from security expert who deals with Russian hybrid war, Patrick Oksanen. At first glance, a Russian Orthodox Church, which is located 100 kilometers away from Stockholm, is just typical religious institution. But if look at the details, it is suspicious enough. Tell us about this church in detail, and why do you think that Russia spreads its influence, including through this church?
This is a story that has many layers. From the beginning, it is surrounding a priest, which was a CEO of a Russian-owned company, who is now convicted for fraudulent bookkeeping. So it was money laundering. Another aspect is that it is close to the Västerås airport, which is a strategic airport in Sweden that could be used for host nation support, NATO and so on. And it has also been used for Swedish Air Force exercises. And it's 5 minutes from the airport. And the facility has lodging possibilities, kitchen, stay over, and it's all fenced in with a heavy iron fence. And then also the process to get this property built in the local permit board, it was very interesting because you had things that you could easily be describing as influence with people on the inside. And then the constructor, Estonian background, drug-related crimes, and being involved with Russians buying properties in Sweden in strategic areas. So you have so many layers, and I can also add a medal from SVR to the priest into the mix.
Who are those people who serve in this church?
Oh, well, the person that it centers here is a priest that has been working with this the whole time to make it happen. He's the central person. But then this is the most important church building for the Russian Orthodox Church in Sweden. It is the first built church in Sweden from the Russian Orthodox Church. All other places where they have been renting or buying or receiving properties that are not built as a purpose for a church. And it was also a big cost to build this. 35 million Swedish crowns, equivalents of 3.5 million euros. And the main financier here was a church fund set up by Rosatom, the Russian state energy company that also produces the Russian nukes. So this is a decision that has been taken on top level in Moscow to build this church.
I would like you expand your answer when it comes to the first question. In your opinion, what tasks could this church provide to Russians, and how?
Well, if we look at it from security, you can say that it could be used here and now, and in a situation when things have been developing even worse than it is today. And what do I mean by that? And this is actually a quote coming from the Swedish security police also. Well, from the start, a church in Sweden is a protected room where the Swedish authorities do not have the legal possibility to make eavesdropping. So you can have safe conversations in a church. Another thing is that it's a platform for influence in the Russian diaspora or people from Ruski Mir, as the Russian Orthodox Church views people from the former Russian Empire. And then you can also use it as a base for espionage, and also espionage base for espionaging on for example, Ukrainian refugees coming to Sweden or trying to influence them with the Russian propaganda. And then you can add layers up to a conflict where you can use a church like this as a storage facility or a starting base for drones and things like that. That are things that we haven't seen yet, but it gives the possibility. And here you have the larger pattern that you establish footholds, religious footholds, platforms close to strategic areas. We see that pattern in Norway. We see that pattern also in Sweden.
There were a lot of discussions about spire of this church, and why spire of this church is higher than it is supposed to be according to building documentation.
Yeah, it exceeded the planning of the area, and that was one thing that was really eyes-opening in the process here, and one thing that was strange also during the process to get the building permit, because it was a strange decision taken in the local permit board. In general, it is taken by the whole board, but in this case, it was a share-only decision, which is not illegal, but highly unusual. And what is the problem with the height? The fact that you have an airport close by could be noted, but also the neighboring city, Enköping, hosts the Swedish Armed Forces headquarters together with installation for telecommunications. So you can also add that into the threat perception of the church.
Let's get back to the people who can be involved in this church or even spy activity. List of guests who attended this church at its inauguration in 2023 also points out that this church could have not only a religious purpose. Tell us please about these suspicious guests.
Well, you're referring now to the inauguration in November 2023, and of course it was a big day for the local parish and the Russian Orthodox Church in Sweden, and they invited guests. Among the honored guests were the ambassador from Belarus, and there was also the second guy from the Russian embassy in Stockholm, a person that Swedish television, the public broadcaster, have pointed out being a Russian intelligence officer. And also there was the hetman of the Nordic Baltic Cossacks, and then there were a lot of priests. The most important priest, that was the Metropolitan Anton coming from Moscow. And Metropolitan Anton, he is the head of the foreign branch of the Russian Orthodox Church, and he's also the personal vicar to Patriarch Kirill. And if you look at the career Metropolitan Anton has had, it has been an astonishing career, and Kirill is the one who's been elevating him up through the ladder in the Russian Orthodox Church to the position he has now. So he is really the Patriarch's close man, close trustee, and that was the most important guest at this occasion.
I would like to provide our audience with your quote from 24 France report. You said, the threat of the Russian Orthodox Church is underappreciated by a lot of countries in Europe. It is the only Russian structure not affected by sanctions, and we tend to make the mistake of looking at it as if it was a church because it looks like a church, when in reality it's something else. You said a lot of countries in Europe. According to your quote, the situation in Sweden is not exclusion, it is just part of system. Could you provide us with any examples when it comes to other European countries?
Yeah, I can happily do that. Here in November 2025, for example, the Finnish security police for the first time stated publicly that they see that the Russian Orthodox Church in Finland are involved in Russian influence work. So that's a quote from Finland. I mentioned Norway very briefly. Outside of Bergen, that's a Norwegian town on the west coast of Norway, lies also the Norwegian naval base Håkonsvern. And there on the other side of the fjord, the Moscow Patriarchate have bought a property, so you have a clear view over the fjord. And they also wanted to build a chapel up in the high north of Norway, outside of Vardø, where you have the big radar, NATO radar, looking down on Murmansk. That building construction was stopped when Russia attacked Ukraine full scale in 2022. We can go to the Czech Republic. The Czech foreign minister pointed out a church in Karlovy Vary as a church where Russian intelligence planned hybrid attacks in Europe. In Estonia, the Estonian authorities have pointed out Russian influence work and also decided that the head of the Estonian Orthodox Church, which is under the Moscow Patriarchate, the head of that Russian citizen, Metropolitan Eugene, he didn't receive prolonged visa. And in Estonia also the parliament have adopted a legislation stated that religious organization steered from countries hostile to Estonia should be forbidden. This legislation, however, has not been signed by the president, who thinks this goes too far on attacking the religious freedom. And here you have the core of the whole debate in Europe right now. It is about religious freedom on one hand and security concerns on the other hand. And that makes it a sensitive issue, and that is also the explanation why the Russian Orthodox Church is not under sanctions, because we cherish freedom of religion, and that kind of value in our countries are used against us by Russia.
As you maybe know, here in Ukraine we have got rid of ties with Russian Orthodox Church due special legislation, special law, because we understand how dangerous Russian Church tentacles are. As a security expert who deals with Russian hybrid war, could you tell us about tools which Russian spy agencies have used through the church in a historical retrospective?
Well, if we go to the historical retrospective and we can just go very far back and state that the Russian Orthodox Church, they were under control of the Tsars. In 1917, when the revolution happened, the Bolshevik took power. Then, of course, the church ended up on the enemy side and was prohibited to function in Soviet Union. But that changed under Stalin. During the Great Patriotic War in 1943, Stalin, he decided that he needed another tool. Marxism, Leninism and Stalinism wasn't enough, so he decided to put it like this, resurrect the Russian Orthodox Church and let them be functioning again, but he put it on the NKVD control. So what you had here was a religious entity controlled by the security structure under the control of the Soviet state. And during the Cold War, Soviet Union used this in order to influence various international bodies, World Church Council, etc., and also used this as a platform to influence and spy or recruit people in the diaspora. And key priests in the church and those who could go abroad, they were part of the security service. One of those, that was the Patriarch Kirill, who worked in Switzerland in the 1970s, working for KGB at the time.
Yeah, and actually, as we see now, old KGB tricks are still working.
Yeah, in that sense, nothing is new under the sky. What is new is how you use it in a modern context, but the old tradecraft is still there.
Yeah. During recent press conference, Putin said that it is ridiculous for him to hear that EU is concerned about potential Russian attack on Europe. Russia allegedly has never thought about it. But the fact is that Russia has already been conducting hybrid war against Europe, including through their religion. In your opinion, how far can Russia go in this context, and how Europe resisting this?
How far Russia could go? Well, Russia, and let me now quote the Swedish military intelligence recent annual report. Russia starts war against its neighbor when they think it's a good opportunity. So that kind of gives you the answer on how far could they go. And they have shown high risk appetite, and also that their aims are still there. And what we will see is a more intense situation. How far it will go, that depends on ourselves. What we're seeing now in Europe is an emerging debate also around the hybrid threat, that Europe needs to answer this also by going on the offense in various ways. It is being pointed out more and more broadly in the security debate that you cannot meet a hybrid threat like the Russian hybrid threat only with resilience. Of course, you need resilience. That's very crucial, that you have a resilient society and resilient systems. So the harm is not that much, but it is not deterrence. And also the level of attacks that we're seeing means that the idea of punishment from punishment of an attack in order to establish deterrence, that is also being passed. So we have a growing understanding that we need to be more on the offense in the hybrid war to start to inflict a larger scale of punishment or on the Russian side in order to establish some kind of deterrence on the long run, but it will not be achieved quickly.
Patrick, this topic is extremely interesting personally for me, and I hope for our audience. Thank you very much for your work and for this discussion, and have a good day.
Thank you for having me.